Welcome back to Normal Island Live. I'm Lewis Aaron, and today we are joined by the amazing Curtis. Curtis, how are you doing?
Hello. Oh, it's so fun to be here. Not gonna lie, I'm quite tired. I've done 2 podcasts this morning off the back of being hungover, which we're going to talk about in a second. Jumped straight off the train and jumped straight on camera. I'm literally wearing the same clothes, and yeah, I feel a bit sweaty. But I'm so happy to be here with you, Lewis.
Oh, you better be. I've got a really quick fun story for you. Can we just get up the surprise graphic that I teased Curtis with after? Because I just thought this was like a really funny thing just to kind of like lighten the mood of the show before we fully get into it. Have we got the graphic on the screen? There we go. I'll come back to Curtis in a second. So this is a submersible device, and I'll make this relevant in a second because it was just like a really funny story that I read today that I just thought it'd be funny to mention. So this is a submersible device that was used by a guy who was arrested in the US because he was being chased by the FBI on a Ponzi scheme. Let's bring Curtis back in. So this device was used as he was being hunted down by the FBI. He drove 160 miles away while being chased, jumped into a lake. He used this submersible device to get away because he was being arrested and charged with a massive Ponzi scheme where he was basically doing lots of illegal things with tens of millions of dollars. Now, Curtis, the reason why I wanted to put this in is because it turns out another player in this scheme actually turned out to be a secret donor to Robert Jenrick.
Oh.
And I thought this was a really interesting thing just to quickly bring up that this guy basically admitted as being a part of this scheme. He didn't try and escape anywhere on a submersible. He actually admitted to his crime. And he also, apparently, according to the byline Times, admitted that, do you remember the story around Robert Jenrick's leadership competition and the shadowy Virgin Islands donor? Turns out that this was a guy who was part of the scheme. His name is, I'll just get it here. My screen just flashed off. His name's Gary Glopstein, and apparently he shouldn't be allowed to donate to the Reform Party, and he managed to channel his money through a company, a fitness company, and donate it under another guy's name called Philip Ullman. And now him and Philip have had a little falling out, so he's grassed up on Klopstein, and now Robert Jenrick seemingly is instigated and potentially taking £100,000 in a donation tied to a massive Ponzi scheme where the leader of it all tried to escape the FBI using a portable submersible device in a lake. By the way, he was in the lake for 30 minutes and they just waited him out. They just waited for the battery of it to run out and then he came back to shore.
They just wait. That's amazing. There was no like high speed chase. It was just like, yeah, we can see you. We're gonna wait for you. Yeah. So you put that in the group chat, and you're like, I'm gonna do a surprise graphic. I had no idea what you were talking about. I thought, all right, like a little weird fan. You got the grills on one side. Like it looks small in the photo. So that was really odd. So I appreciate that. Yeah, that's. I mean, connection. You've been doing a lot of work actually in connections to reform and donors and stuff. So
there'll hopefully be a lot coming out in the future related to some very shadowy and dark reform-related donors. Also, hopefully coming out soon.
Glopstein. Damn, what a name! That's like a comic book character.
I know. But anyway, I just thought it was just a funny story worth mentioning, but not worth like an entire section on because it made me laugh today. Anyway, let's jump into the stories and we'll bring back Curtis soon. So, coming up on tonight's show, we're talking about MPs' drinking habits. We're going to be talking about King Shadowy Spider himself, Morgan McSweeney, being grilled in Parliament, and a confrontation between a politician and a TV show host that's been doing some numbers online over the last few days. But obviously, you can help us grow by visiting turnleftmedia.co.uk/support to help fund or our work, or by becoming a YouTube member too. So let's go on to the first story. Now, there was a moment this week that in many ways perfectly captured everything ordinary that ordinary people hate about British politics. We're not talking about, corruption necessarily, or tax dodgers, or dodgy PPE contracts, but something that's just arguably so irritating to even hear. And it's normalized, this entitlement of a political class that's, insulated from ordinary work in life, that, their behaviors, which would get, most people disciplined, suspended, or sacked, are simply treated as part of the furniture in Westminster.
I'm really uneasy about, and I noticed this the other day, when you can smell the alcohol when people are in between votes, and as everyone's going in to vote, some people have been drinking in between. Like there's a room where I walked past and I doubled back and looked in because people are just sat having a drink. But again, that's a job. Like I can't imagine if a cleaner did that or someone working in a bank, like had a few drinks and then went back to work, like a bit, like smelling of alcohol, like that wouldn't happen. And I think there's been so many cases recently of like questionable and dangerous behaviour from, allegedly from MPs, but staff, because this culture of a really unprofessional and worrying setting where people can just drink alcohol and then while they're in work, it's like life doesn't work like that. And when I say that, that is what I find very out of touch about that place. It's things like that I mean, because I just think the vast majority of us that have come from backgrounds of normal jobs, that's not how the world works. So why does it work in somewhere where arguably the most important decisions get made?
Now, I'm sure we've all seen the clip, right? We all know that's, Hannah Spencer, the newest Parliament MP for the Greens. Now, the history of drinking in Parliament ties back to, it goes back hundreds of years. There's always been some sort of bar there. There's multiple bars, actually, all across the parliamentary grounds. It's subsidised by the taxpayer. And, I'm not personally against the idea of maybe going out for a work lunch with colleagues and maybe having a small drink with your meal, right? But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about, basically, MPs being in Parliament for long hours. Let's say they do go in there for long hours sometimes. Sometimes they can be in there for, more than half a day. Fair enough. They do work hard, some of them, but lots of them just get pissed in between. They have multiple pints at the bar, taxpayers subsidised bars, and it's been reported on for years, for decades, of parliamentarians stinking of alcohol, of being drunk, and it ties back to the days of, the gentlemen who used to rule Parliament more, the people who were probably, either an aristocrat or some powerful businessman, popping into Parliament, doing a bit of debates, having a little rant, going into the bar, having a jolly good old time, and, just kind of that gentleman kind of lifestyle. And it's kind of never really gone away, the cigars, the men and the bars discussing things. Now, this topic has actually come up before, and there's always been talks from, people saying, oh, only if people knew how much got done in these, conversations over a pint, and how many amazing things can happen like this. And again, I'm not even necessarily against an odd drink in a work-related event, a lunch, but just getting smashed between, votes, stinking of alcohol, if you get to that point, it's not acceptable, is it, at all, in any way? None of us would get away with it at all. Maybe if you're, a recruiter, that's famously part of the lifestyle, going out, getting pissed, getting clients. But in most people's line of work, it's just, it wouldn't be acceptable. I've known 2 people in my life who've been fired because of it. And why should anybody else get any other treatment? And what makes it even more embarrassing is the fact that people are defending MPs getting pissed up on the job. This is Stella Chardico. Sorry, I'm pretty bad at pronouncing names. Former parliamentary aide to Labour MPs on the front bench. She put this on social media saying, sorry, MPs are often cooped up in Parliament for 15 hours a day. They will have a drink with journalists or colleagues and will still be, discussing politics, their job, as Hannah says. I don't like the blanket demonisation of MPs, and Hannah should know better after she had already been accused of not taking the job seriously because she took part in the dancing event in Portacola's house. Now, it was unfair to call her unserious about that then. And sorry, I don't like the way people word certain tweets. It was unfair to call her unserious about that then, and it's unfair of her to now suggest that MPs having a drink in between votes, which takes up all night, is by default a bad thing. Sorry, I'm really bad at reading out wordy social media posts. Anyway, now, our very own Curtis Daly put out his little 2 pence on social media as well. I'm absolutely okay with MPs not drinking on the job. It's not a human right. Then they have a little back and forth again and again. And then Stella, which is a brilliant name for this topic, then proposes this. Can an MP volunteer to take me and Curtis to the Strangers Bar for a drink so that I can show him in action? I don't think people can understand what we're talking about unless they experience the time and space setup. Curtis' response kills me. I like my beer and I'm absolutely ready for the challenge. Fortunately, I'm not an MP, so I won't feel bad drinking. Is Stella aware Curtis isn't an MP? And again, it's almost like this idea of defending it in so many ways. I wouldn't be against the odd drink in terms of work-related events. I've said this, if it's, out for a small lunch. People go to other work events where it can be networking and there might be some small, tiny, casual drinking there. People might have a small drink at certain events, whether it's celebratory. These things happen, and I think that's absolutely fine. But we're talking about people being at work stinking of booze while they're going in and out and voting, while they're interacting with other MPs. How many stories can we think of where an MP has been, reportedly in a bit of a scuffle in the corridor? How are you going to bet that that person's probably just come from the bar and has been in the bar all night? These are the people who are legislating everything about this entire country in between going to the bar, having a little piss up on taxpayer expense. But can we start debunking something as well? Because I'm sure that you've all seen this sort of response everywhere. This is what Chris Murray said. He said, the Greens world, you can't have a pint after work, but heroin is legal. Now, this is just a lazy straw man. Nobody is saying that MPs can't have a pint after work, or even as I said, maybe an odd one at lunchtime, when you're going out for some food. The criticism is about MPs drinking during parliamentary working days between votes while they are still participating in the legislative process. They can't do that with a clear head when they've got multiple pints in their tummy, right? Can they? No. And it's not really after work. It's during work, consistently, multiple times, multiple trips to the bar. And the heroin line is just, again, deliberately dishonest. The Greens' position is not to make heroin freely available like a packet of crisps. Their argument is that the war on drugs has failed, criminalization has not eliminated drug use, and addiction should be treated as a public health issue. You can disagree with that, but at least, argue with actual policy rather than some warped up Daily Mail hallucination. There is also no contradiction between supporting harm reduction for drug addiction and expecting lawmakers to be sober while making laws. In fact, those positions are pretty, bloody consistent. The real hypocrisy is not Hannah Spencer saying Parliament has a drinking culture. The real hypocrisy is Westminster constantly lecturing ordinary people about discipline and standards, then throwing a tantrum when those same MPs are held to the same standards. And the public, unsurprisingly, are just not buying the defence. Polling from YouGov shows that the overwhelming majority of people think it is unacceptable for MPs to drink on nights when they are expected to vote in Parliament. A full 76%, can't get my words out. A full 76% of the public think MPs drinking before evening votes is unacceptable, and more than half thinks it's just completely unacceptable. Obviously, is anybody surprised by that at all in any way? I can guarantee the people who voted, saying, oh, they're for it, they're probably, the recruiters that I talked about earlier. We all know their reputation. Can't say I'm surprised at all by the way people think about this, because, again, it's just another hypocrisy, which is leading to the disillusionment of people in politics and the political system. But finally, Stella asked if any MP were willing to invite the two to Parliament. Curtis accepted the challenge. Curtis, please accept the challenge. Curtis, can you give me your reactions to this? Also, I know you were at Parliament yesterday. You mentioned obviously been on podcasts. What have you been up to, and what's your reaction to all of this? And by the way, I'm very wordy today. I can't get my words out, so I apologize. It's been a while.
Really interesting, yeah. So of course we can go into debunking what Stella and other people were saying. But yes, she did challenge me. She said, look, because you need an MP to invite you to get into Parliament. So that's why she said, can an MP invite us? And I just tweeted Politics Joe. I said, can you make this happen? And I got a DM from Ava within 30 seconds saying, let's do it. Next minute, I'm going down to Parliament, going as a stranger's bar and having some drinks. The MP who was technically on record who escorted us in was Barry Gardiner. And I tell you what, it was a really interesting experience. I felt quite uncomfortable because it felt like a really sort of schmoozing kind of thing. It felt like a proper in and out club, and I was the outsider. I mean, that's materially true, right? I was the outsider, but it did absolutely feel like that. The sense of I don't know, superiority sort of came, it was there in the atmosphere. But I was open to having my mind changed. I wouldn't have went otherwise, and I did say that. And I do think there are some certain nuances which do make sense. And I actually think that Stella did actually make some good arguments. She made better arguments to me in person or on the Politics Joe podcast, which we filmed this morning. I think it's going out tomorrow, which you can watch. Rather than what she tweeted. But to be honest, it's hard to get nuance when you're having a Twitter conversation. I completely understand. Yes, I mean, even Barry Gardiner himself told me he used to run a small business and he would take clients out to lunch and they would have maybe a drink and whatever. Stella and other people made the observation that in order to get anywhere in Parliament, especially for journalists, you kind of need to have that social lubricant, try and get stories. If anything, I have more sympathy for the journalists, and especially sort of smaller independent journalists, or even people like Ava. I have more sympathy for them because they're just trying to get out information from MPs. And yes, sometimes we've heard you can get more information out of them when they're drunk. I get that. Stella also made the argument, which, again, I think she made a better argument in person than she did online, which was that, look, in the age of AI, we need to bolster human connection. What's wrong with MPs, and not just MPs, but staff around them and journalists having some sort of socialization in the long hours of the day? I actually, if I was on her side, I would use that argument above, well, they work really long hours, therefore they need a pint. You don't need a pint after 12 hours. If you do, that's a problem there. What I did notice, though, when I went into the bathroom, there was sick in one of the sinks. So immediately I was like, 1-0 to Curtis. There was a particular MP, Labour MP, very, very high-profile Labour MP, was battered. In fact, I could barely speak to them. I tried having a conversation with them, and it was, nowhere. So that particular person was very, very drunk. Now, I was with more left-leaning Labour MPs. Barry Garner was drinking Coke. Other people were drinking lemonade. And I was with them, and we were chatting. You know, I guess I was there in a journalistic capacity, but not really. I wasn't getting paid for it. I wasn't on the job, but we'll come to that in a second. And they were happily having conversations on lemonade. So why do you need to drink? I also don't sort of buy that argument. I don't feel sorry for MPs. And again, I reiterate, I don't think it's like human right to have alcohol at work. Now, I am not against drinking at work. And I think this is what... And to be fair, Stella said this to me. She said that you're kind of being puritanical and that the Greens are puritanical. I reject that, of course. I'm not against people drinking at work. I think it's absolutely up to the discretion of your employer. If you work in an office job, I worked in an office job before, and we've gone out for a pint on a Friday during lunch. 1 pint, that's it. I also work in hospitality. I actually think it's essential that you drink alcohol if you wish to in hospitality. Imagine like doing sober nights in a bar on a Friday night or Saturday night is not fun. When you drink, it's so much better. So I'm not against drinking at work. What I am against is drinking in certain places of work. I'm against those who drive buses drinking. I'm against doctors and nurses who drink. Now, some are going to say, well, that's entirely different because that's a safety issue. Of course it's different. I mean, an MP getting drunk, whilst disgraceful, people aren't going to be physically hurt. However, I do think that when you're a politician earning like 90k a year that are making decisions for the rest of the country, I think someone should have a clear, sober mind. Now, some of the rebuttal is... most of these MPs vote with the whip. They already know how they're going to vote. It's not even them thinking about voting. It's simply just waiting in the lobby until they're called up to vote. I think that's a fair argument or fair pushback. It's not like these people can be impaired. But what we see is Robert Jenrick and Suella Braverman, who were, sober as we know, as we think we know, they voted to scrap the 2-child benefit cap instead of wanting to keep it, right? They simply walk through the wrong lobby. So if people don't know, in order to vote in Parliament, there's no sort of digital system. You literally have to walk into one room for yes and walk into another room for no. It's incredibly archaic. So when I was getting MPs and Stella and other people saying, yeah, but this is why it's okay to have a drink in Parliament, because, again, like the voting system's archaic. They're spending hours there. What they're going to do in between votes. I say... it just gives me an issue with the wider system. I say, well, why is the voting system this way? During the pandemic, there was a proposal to digitalize voting for parliamentarians, that they could vote from home. That was voted down. They didn't do it. They didn't modernise it. The reason was because no MP would turn up to Parliament because they could vote from home. And I'm like, well, at the end of the day, if the excuse is, well, parliamentarians can drink because all they do is vote and they know the way they're voting anyway, so does it matter if they're at home as long as they're voting? And yes, I don't think every MP is just going to stay at home then. I mean, they're still probably going to go to Parliament and make some big speeches. They're going to still turn up to debates and they're going to want to speak to journalists. So I don't think that disincentivizes it. So I'm still not convinced, shall I say. I think, excuse me, cough. I do think, yes, there are certain nuances, and I take your point about, again, I think it's okay to have like a pint, during lunch or whatever. But there's a big issue here. And this is where people who defend like drinking alcohol at work, they'll say, well, of course we don't support MPs getting drunk. That's bad. I'm like, okay. And we know it's a minority of them, but there's nothing stopping them at the moment. All right, there's nothing stopping an MP getting fucked up if they want to, whether it's a minority of them. And it's not crazy to think maybe there should be some certain regulation of rules in place to stop that from happening. We have it in every other workplace, right? I mean, if you turned up pissed to work, you'd be fired or at least sent home. If you're turning up pissed or you're pissed in Parliament, unless the story gets out, you're not in trouble. So there's a huge, huge issue here. And I just think that maybe, for one, why are MPs working such long hours? Why are the votes done in this way? That should be updated. And two, the way they physically vote by walking through a door is absolutely archaic and crazy to me. And finally, I want to say that for me, the core argument is I want Parliament to be incredibly boring and procedural. And the reason why is because I want to promote people who truly care about this country, who truly want to pass policies that will benefit people in this country. And if you have a scenario in which, okay, it's not quite a gentleman's club anymore, right? It used to be, there's still a bit of a hangover of that. It's changed, of course. There's more women in there, for example. But if you still kind of have that, then there's going to be a lot of MPs like, this is kind of cushy, right? And you're not going to get the best quality politicians. So it should be procedural. It should be boring. That doesn't mean I'm puritanical. That doesn't mean I don't want pints banned or the Green Party saying they want after work pints banned. I mean, the response from the Labour MPs have been fucking wild, and they're absolute twats. They're ridiculous and they're stupid, and I encourage them to continue these attacks against the Greens because no one's buying it. I mean, first of all, 70% of people do not support this. And I think the average person can understand. I think we need a public health approach to drugs, even if you disagree with it. We want a sort of different way of doing the war on drugs, but also you can have a pint. The Greens are not arguing against that.
I think what it shows to me is like the difference between someone like Hannah Spencer is a person who's obviously worked. And when I say worked, I mean, you've worked a 9 to 5 or a 6 to 6, whether it's like a proper shift work where it's kind of set and you have like a schedule. And obviously a lot of people who end up in Parliament or adjacent to it, think of people, everyone from Farage to Jenrick to, people who are businessmen or landlords, these types of people, they don't have typical working schedules. Now, I'm still not even going to, it sounds like I'm defending them. People still work hard even if they don't have a normal working schedule, right? But these types of people are the people who will, go out for, lunches with drinks very often. They do a lot of, like kind of business meetings with whiskey and this type of stuff, right? This is who a lot of these types of people are. Like, Farage works, what was it, like in like minerals and stuff like that, like trading or something, years and years ago. Yeah, he probably, had to do long, shitty hours just for a few years. But ever since then, he's essentially been a businessman, right? Do you think Nigel Farage has like really had to do anything? What's restricted him from ever being able to access alcohol? And that's the same for a lot of people like Jenrick and all these other millionaires and businessmen and landlords. Like they live their working life by this like almost like quasi-social kind of job, right? They still, again, may work long hours, but they don't work. They don't understand the restrictions of it. They've had this freedom of being this like casual laissez-faire businessman where it's all about cigars, drinking, casual events, going to all these types of meetings and stuff where they don't really work, but they just don't get it. There's that disconnect, right? And I think that's like a big root cause of a lot of who these people are in Parliament and have been obviously for many years.
Also, I need to clarify something. And to be fair, Andy, I picked this up from Andy Twelves. He said that it's not technically subsidised, or it kind of is. It's not subsidised in a way in which the taxpayer is like paying for cheaper prices for MPs. What's happening here is the drinks are at cost price. So MPs are just paying the cost price rather than the taxpayer coming in and like making it cheaper for them. Having said that, though, how do the companies make money? What's happening to the staff? Like if there's no profit, where does the staff wages come from? So I think what's happening is the taxpayer isn't subsidising cheaper drinks for MPs, but the taxpayer may be subsidising the profits, which to me, I guess that's a delineation, but it's still a massive slap in the face. The taxpayers are still essentially paying a bit of money for either the staff to work there or MPs to drink alcohol, which I think is pretty egregious.
What's also funny as well, it's just like a little annoyance of mine, is that there are MPs who have access to, there's literally over a dozen bars and restaurants within the parliamentary like grounds around the area from Westminster to the buildings next door, and some of them will still choose to go out and go get an expensive lunch and claim it on expenses. But
well, I also heard a very funny argument, and again, I'm not sure if I buy it, which is that it's about MP safety, which is that, well, if you had MPs going out into London to pubs, it's a very dangerous thing, got all these MPs together, and, you know, anything could happen. One, I would say, I think that, again, drinking isn't a human right? If you can't get a drink and you're like 40 MPs that go to a pub outside of Parliament to put yourself at risk and other MPs at risk for a pint, that says more about them. But also, there are many pubs near Westminster, which is famous for MPs to go there. I mean, when there's like Labour conference, you can definitely find MPs in like nearby pubs. So I did think that was an old argument. Having said that, I think so when you go into Parliament, it was really strange. There's so many different corridors and stuff, of course, as you can imagine. It is kind of like a university campus. There's a gym there. There's like a bar on the outside sort of thing. You know, no one would argue against sort of a student union bar. Once again, those students are not running the country. I don't have an issue with the PCH, which is the Portcullis House pub, which is, it's like the first level of security. Then you go in. Because that to me could be like, well, you can definitely have a pint after work. Like on your way out from leaving the lobby and like the chamber and stuff, then you can pop in there. And that's where you can have your schmoozing and conversations with journalists, right? I actually don't mind having that pub there. And MPs can get as drunk as they want once they finish voting. The problem I have specifically is Strangers Bar. Because once you go into the next part of the security, you're then in Strangers Bar, which, imagine a corridor of Parliament, right? You've got all these rooms, right? And there are offices everywhere, then there's toilets, and then one room's just a bar. Like, it's just planted in there, and it's very accessible. And you've got MPs going, like, well, I was watching it, and they've got the TV screen of MPs voting, and they've got the numbers of the votes and stuff, and then a bell rings, goes ding, 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 and that's when they go and vote. Like, it's so accessible from the chamber, from the Commons to the inside pub. That's what I have a problem with. I don't have a problem with, like, yes, the other pub, which is kind of inside Parliament, but on the outskirts. I think that makes a big difference too.
Right. We will have to move on because we spent a lot of time on this story. But interesting experience that obviously Curtis had there. Sick in the sink. Very interesting. Obviously, there are people out there who can, you know, I think sensibly self-regulate, have a drink and continue, their job in a very casual way. You know, drink when you're on a break, having a long lunch, whatever it might be. I'm fine with that. But seeing people pissed, hearing about it for years, it's just not on, is it? It's just not on. But let's get on to Morgan McSweeney. So, you know, it's getting back-to-back coverage, I think, maybe, as it should be. Maybe some people would argue it's getting too much coverage. But obviously, Morgan McSweeney has been in front of the Foreign Affairs Committee regarding the appointment of Peter Mandelson. I'm almost like fed up of hearing about Peter Mandelson, but we have to talk about it. So obviously, Morgan McSweeney, the now former Chief of Staff, has been in front of them all being grilled about Peter Mandelson's appointment as the UK's ambassador to Washington. Now, this was really widely anticipated. I feel like political geeks and, you know, Westminster insiders obviously were, you know, loving this more because of, we all know kind of who Morgan McSweeney is, and still I don't think most people in the country do. They don't know what he's about. You know, famously, I think up until the last few days, people have said, we don't even know what he sounds like. I think a lot of people didn't even know he was Irish. But, you know, political geeks are kind of like into this a little bit too much, but how does it kind of like, you know, translate to the public? We don't know. But we all know how he operates. We all know, what he's done to people. It's been widely reported on consistently for years. And again, it was probably the only second or third time I've ever heard him talk. But let's take a quick look at like some of the questions and some of the responses and answers. So he started off by recognizing the harm done to Epstein victims, which just gives the same energy as, thoughts and prayers after a school shooting at this point, because it's just kind of the standard saying that everybody's going after now. Oh, my thoughts are with the victims. But it still means nothing because, we've got people being scrutinized about the appointment of Peter Mandelson over his ties to Jeffrey Epstein, but we still really haven't seen, I'm not even just talking about the UK, I'm talking about the world, really anybody else being brought to account. So where's the push for that? But let's move on. Now, when asked about pressuring officials to pass Mandelson at all costs, he said that he recommended Mandelson based on his experience, relationship, and political skills, which to me just translates on how best to navigate relationships with convicted or accused sex offenders and pedos with huge egos. And that's we all know that's exactly why he did it. He knew who Mandelson was. And then he denied having anything to do with the vetting procedures and pressuring of people to skip and or fast track or ignore any processes, which goes against now just so many different rumors. It's a long list of leaks and now testimony and well-sourced leads that all came to the same conclusion, that there was extreme political pressure on the people to essentially just get Mandelson through. He's just obviously trying to cover his tracks. Now, he tried to quell the notion that he had all this power by saying that, yes, he advised the Prime Minister to appoint Mandelson, but Starmer listens to everyone. And that if Starmer would have had lots of opposition, he would not have made the appointment. It's not just down to, Morgan McSweeney saying make it. But apparently, according to McSweeney, no one else really opposed it. But it adds again another layer. So it's not just a case of, and again, this is just according to McSweeney, even though we've had tons of leaks saying that loads of people were advising Starmer not to do this, according to McSweeney, that by trying to say that I'm not this powerful guy, I'll advise the Prime Minister, and if other people would have said don't do it, he wouldn't have. But apparently most people were on board. So again, that just says the team around him are shit, because there was no one opposing it openly to Starmer in these meetings when they were talking about it. It's just another indictment of the ability of these people to do their jobs. Now, he continued to answer questions back and forth, but everything was like very procedural. It was almost like very rehearsed in lots of different ways. Now, he actually admitted that when he wanted to ask Mandelson questions, he wanted to put them in writing to Mandelson. So they were on record, hoping he would be more forthcoming about the truth of his links to possible conflicts of interest, Epstein, whatever it might be. And that he would be more truthful, which again comes back to the idea of, if you're having to think like this, if you're having to say, right, we've got this guy, he's got some shady links, we're gonna make it and put it in writing and put it on paper because he'll be more forthcoming. Why are you already trying to push this guy if you have to ask these questions? It doesn't make any sense. But let's see the full quote, because it leads to something else, because he actually admitted that he wanted to basically throw Starmer under the bus, because he basically said that he advised Starmer to appoint Mandelson, and apparently Starmer actually saw the vetting. He said that Starmer saw the developed vetting, and it was then above McSweeney's head, and Starmer made the decision to appoint him. I just don't buy that. I just don't buy it in any way. It doesn't make sense in everything that we know about the reporting on this. It's not even just the casual rumors, it's the consistent reporting on the idea that Starmer was completely clued up on this. Like, I'm not even, it almost sounds like I'm defending Starmer in a way, because I'm not, because this is his mess. He's supposed to be in charge. But what doesn't make sense is that the one thing that people consistently report on about Starmer, and they have done for years, is that he reads everything. He reads so much. He has all this information, and he reads a lot, and he reads a lot. It just doesn't make sense. I still do believe, this is just my opinion, that there was essentially a conspiracy of power just to push Mandelson through with some level of consent with Keir Starmer, but also under the guise of a conspiracy by Morgan McSweeney, his allies, to get what they want, to circumvent and possibly manipulate the Prime Minister, because they thought this is what was going to be best. It just doesn't, to me, makes sense. But anyway, we also had this. We had an admission that Mandelson had a role in vetting candidates before the 2024 election. This was widely reported on a little while ago, and gladly somebody asked the question. But McSweeney says that he was not involved in vetting candidates ahead of the 2024 election. The vetting work was done by Labour HQ. Mandelson was not involved in selecting candidates, he said, which it seems too niche of a story to be just made up or just to be a rumor. It seems like that story is almost like nothing to do with anything, to do with Epstein, to do with Mandelson, to do with Washington, to do with Starmer. It's just something that's out there. It seems too ridiculous to be made up. So I can't help but think that it is true, because it just seems so ridiculous just to make something up that would just be out of nowhere, that he was involved in the vetting process of these candidates. And then there's also the last bit as well. Like, how did Mandelson become the lead candidate, he was asked. And McSweeney says that there were two strong candidates on the shortlist for Starmer, Peter Mandelson and George Osborne, the former Tory Chancellor. Now, George Osborne, actually, you know what? Let's bring in Curtis and we'll talk about George Osborne. Curtis, obviously there's almost like too much reporting on this, in the sense of like, you don't know where to look, you don't know what to look for, you don't know what is the things that we should be really looking into further. But what's like the biggest thing that came out of this for you? Because it just seemed very well rehearsed to me, but also there was a few kind of like slip ups there and a few things that you can read into, which just shows that these people are just a bunch of, like, in many ways, shit political operators.
This is going to be a developing story, because there were so many different threads here, which I can even see you kind of struggling to get through. It's not your fault. It's simply because you're focusing on one particular aspect of this case, and then something else crops up. Right? We're talking about JP Morgan even, and then George Osborne's name's invoked. So I appreciate how it's very difficult. So this is going to be a developing story over the next couple of days, couple of weeks. We're going to really go through it. What jumped out to me? I don't think there's anything that particularly jumped out to me, because one, when it comes to select committees, especially when you're facing a grilling, politicians will just give you the political answer. There's never going to be sort of any self-admittance. It's all sort of passing the blame and pushing responsibility away from yourself, which is what Morgan McSweeney did. I didn't learn really anything new. It just reaffirms my view that I've had of Morgan McSweeney, Keir Starmer, that sort of Labour leadership team, ever since 2020, is that they are not smart political operators. Morgan McSweeney was always spoken about and touted in the corners, you know, again, I call him former shadow prime minister, that he was the smart guy, which just shows that's not the case. I mean, let's take specifically Peter Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein. If you get a whiff, just a sort of a smell of any kind of link to paedophilia or paedophilia adjacent or the world's most notorious paedophile, right, just simply on optics, you wouldn't bring someone in who's linked to that. So Peter Mandelson had a link to Jeffrey Epstein. Now, maybe Keir Starmer and Morgan McSweeney didn't know the extent, but just the mere fact that you have a photo together, and this isn't sort of a photo in which you're at a public event and you kind of get, a quick photo of Epstein, and this is all before everything came out. There's an image of Peter Mandelson in his underwear. I think there's like a underage person in that photo too. And there's a picture of Peter Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein going shopping. Right, it felt like, I think it looked like a paparazzi kind of shot, right? So it wasn't a public event in which you may rub shoulders with certain people. This is in a private capacity. That alone should disqualify anyone from public office, wouldn't it? And even if you felt like, do you know what, this guy is really skillful, as in Peter Mandelson, we need to bring him in. Again, optically, you don't want to do that. So why have they done that? And I think the big problem here with this select committee is a massive distraction. I'm not saying the committee itself is a distraction. It's important. I'm saying it's being distracted by the fact that Keir Starmer appointed Peter Mandelson in the first place, and you had corporate media journalists, you had people like John Sopel, I always invoke his name in this, because I remember he was like, oh, this is a really sound appointment from Keir Starmer. Peter Mandelson, yes, how very sensible and grown up. And now Sopel's like, oh my God, this is really, really bad. The corporate media cheered Peter Mandelson. They said he was a good quality appointment because Peter Mandelson is within the establishment and legacy media is the arm of the establishment. And now suddenly they're all offended by Mandelson, which they shouldn't be. The scandal, the real scandal, is the fact that Keir Starmer appointed him in the first place. What we did learn from today is that whilst Morgan McSweeney, he's sort of played part of the fall guy, he also has the responsibility because I think he was the one who was in charge. But he wanted to try and protect Keir Starmer's character. But all he did was show the world that Keir Starmer had no principles. He also didn't take any responsibility for this. And no one looks good from the select committee. So, again, I say I don't think I learned that much. It just reaffirms all of our views that these are not smart political operators that we were told they were, right? Keir Starmer can, start a meeting or table a meeting, He can take minutes in a, he's just the really smart and grown-up guy. That was what we promised at the 2024 general election, that Labour are going to be the grown-ups in charge. They're not going to change anything in terms of ideology or policy or transform the country for the better. It was just a change of guard, and that was it. And it's all fallen into tatters because they haven't done anything to improve people's material conditions. It's been scandal after scandal after scandal, and it's just job for mates. That's what we saw here. Job for mates. Peter Mandelson, doesn't matter how dodgy he was, they appointed him. To me, I think it's quite insane that you appoint someone like Peter Mandelson before you go through the due process. That's what happened, by the way. They appointed him first, and then they asked questions later, and then this happens, and now it's a political embarrassment for the government. Once again, an unforced error. But it was almost like they were willing to risk that because they really wanted Peter Mandelson in. What was very interesting is that McSweeney admitted that had Kamala Harris won the general election in America, Peter Mandelson wouldn't have been chosen as the US ambassador. One, we can't really know for certain. It may have happened anyway. And two, the reason being is because, Trump's a difficult guy. We're dealing with a very difficult man here, and Peter Mandelson's the guy for the job because he was EU commissioner one time in terms of trade. I don't think Mandelson has the credentials to show that anyway. What's he achieved? And secondly, the Trump administration was happy with the previous ambassador. And I think we know that Trump is a guy that's, it's hard to get in favor. It's hard to get on the side of Trump. He doesn't like a lot of people, especially someone who he considers his political opponents. Yet the Trump administration was happy with the previous ambassador. So you don't mess with that. Yet they decided to replace her with Peter Mandelson. So again, I don't see any logical reason as to why Peter Mandelson should have had the job, apart from the fact this guy's part of the establishment, he wanted a job and he got it. Morgan McSweeney, when he was asked, who were the people that told you about Peter Mandelson that you wanted the job? Anyone significant? And Morgan McSweeney said, yes, Peter Mandelson. So Peter Mandelson literally went to Morgan McSweeney and Keir Starmer and said, I want this job. Then he got the job.
I've joked for years now that it's almost like the Irish Revenge, that Ireland have secretly sent Morgan McSweeney as a spy to the UK to bring us down, because that's essentially what Morgan McSweeney's done, right? If you go back to 10 years ago-ish, right, when McSweeney first developed this plan to, let's just start off at the right place. The reporting says is that Jeremy Corbyn got almost 40% of the vote, but he was never going to win in Morgan McSweeney's eyes. So instead of potentially building on that momentum and not all working together as a party, he decided to take him down, right? He decided to manufacture the anti-Semitism claims. He literally went out of his way to try and almost destroyed the Canary, the most pro-Corbyn outlet at the time, by getting advertisers to boycott them, by going into Facebook groups, just like random Facebook groups of just like people who are like local Labour supporters and canvassers, and and finding any example of anti-Semitism and manufacturing these complaints to turn it into what it became, the anti-Semitism scandal. Now, there was lots of failures from Corbyn during that period. However, the damage that was done to the Labour Party because of that period, which was helped and mostly, in many ways, manufactured by Morgan McSweeney, which the entire media ecosystem loved, they took advantage of, and it still tarnishes Labour to this day. By him doing that to get into power, to get to where he is now, to operate in the way that he's operated, he's now done more damage to the Labour Party than Jeremy Corbyn, in his eyes, ever has.
100%.
He has brought it to a point where, if you believe all the reporting, that essentially Morgan McSweeney was essentially running the show. Not in the sense of like Starmer knew it. And this is where, again, if you actually look into other people, whether it's Starmer's biographers and people who are actually close to Starmer, is that he has actually got a bit of an ego. I think you have to when you're in politics, and he's quite competitive. I think he refuses to believe that where he is because of Morgan McSweeney, and I think he thinks it's more him and his leadership and him choosing good people. And I think for him to never truly see Morgan McSweeney for who he is his biggest downfall, because by seeing him for who he actually is earlier on could have done so much good for Labour. It really could have, because
but there's a reason why he wouldn't do that. It's willful ignorance, right? Either he knew his character and chose to lie about it, or he couldn't see who Morgan McSweeney was. But either way, it was willful ignorance, because Keir Starmer has Morgan McSweeney to thank for becoming Prime Minister. Read the Starmer Project by Oliver Eagleton. Read The Fraud, which specifically documents Morgan McSweeney, and specifically documents how Morgan McSweeney wanted to bring the canary, right? Starmer's sort of leadership campaign didn't start in 2020, right? It didn't start when he announced his leadership bid. It started in 2016, 2017, maybe 2018. I'm pretty sure it's 2017, right? They were plotting Jeremy Corbyn's downfall, as we kind of already knew, even off the back of the 40% of the vote share, right? Not after 2019, where people are like, oh, it's a big loss. It was when Jeremy Corbyn won over 30 seats, increased the vote share by 10%, added 3 million votes. Like, incredibly successful campaign, given the odds too. Yeah, Morgan McSweeney was looking to find a replacement, but it was a very specific replacement, not someone who was ideological. Right, so Wes Streeting, for example, is someone who's too ideological in his beliefs. Right, I disagree with Wes Streeting, but I think he has beliefs in some regards. Keir Starmer has zero beliefs, and Morgan McSweeney wanted an empty shell so he could project himself into Keir Starmer. That's why he chose Keir Starmer. So whether any questions Keir Starmer could have thought of about Morgan McSweeney, his brain told him, I'm not really going to ask these questions because I could thank every single day that I'm Prime Minister because of this man. Because at the end of the day, Morgan McSweeney's project was not about a vision for the country. There was no theory of change. There was no trying to undo the damage of the last 14 years of the Conservative Party, or transforming the country for the better, or even having an ethical foreign policy. It was entirely defined by being anti-left wing. That was the entire project, to make sure that not only Jeremy Corbyn becomes leader ever again, or someone like him, but that the Labour Party was like vaguely centre-left. That like social democracy was burned to the ground. Not socialism, but just basic social democracy. And that was the main project, to make sure that the Labour Party was a right-wing clique. I say this so many times, I'm going to say it again.
Sorry, go ahead.
Was to say every single attack line they said about Jeremy Corbyn, that he's a Stalinist, that he's top down, it's a hard left clique. That is true of Keir Starmer. Jeremy Corbyn's first shadow cabinet was very broad. He had Hilary Benn in his shadow cabinet. The guy who was a massive Blairite. Not only that, when there was a decision to bomb Syria, Jeremy Corbyn made a speech against it. Hilary Benn made a speech in favour of it. If I was leader at the time, I would never have granted that. I'm not going to be embarrassed by someone who said they want to bomb brown people, but that happened because Jeremy Corbyn was very collaborative. He wasn't a hard left clique kind of guy. He should have been more like Stalin. That's the argument. He wasn't. Yet Keir Starmer is sacked, has removed the whip from anyone who slightly disagrees with him. 2-child benefit cap, you think that's immoral? You're gone. A year later, we want to scrap it anyway. He whipped his MPs just the other day to stop him from being referred to the Select Committee. You're telling me that Jeremy Corbyn was the Stalinist? Absolutely not. Starmer has ran an authoritarian political party and a government And Morgan McSweeney is behind it all. The Labour Party is well and truly dead. And if we had justice in this world, it will not make a revival. For the good of politics and for the good of the world, the party needs to be fucking obliterated.
Well, yeah, that's the point that I was going to get to as well, with the fact that the damage that McSweeney's done to get to where he is and to put Starmer where he is, the damage isn't over yet. I've been saying this for years now. The fact that they have been so hard on the left of the party by essentially purging them, muting them, leaking on them, they got rid of people, everyone from Louise Hay, who was seen as like the most left-leaning cabinet minister very quickly. That was reported to be Morgan McSweeney, even though that she disclosed that the whole phone situation. Obviously, we can go to Sue Gray, we can go to any other person who's been purged from the party, right? You can even go back to the drama, and I cannot remember his name, around the candidate in Clacton. Like, there was some drama with him to do with
Jovan. He's one of the co-hosts of What's Left. I think his last name.
All I remember is his amazing fashion sense.
Incredible. The guy is so dripped out, and he was like a
good speaker as well. Good speaker.
Yeah, a young person of color. It was a young person of color, seemed quite charismatic. Could have been a great Labour candidate, and they did him dirty.
Yeah, and the same as well in the constituency that I was in just recently, Pfizer Shaheen's, right? They tried to do the whole purge of the left thing, and they essentially gave Ian Duncan Smith his seat back because he was definitely going to lose it. And the damage that this situation is created by the fact that they've got rid of all these people, or basically silenced them, or took their power away from them in any way that they can, is that once the Starmerism is over and they're all gone, they've cleaned the pie out and left nobody behind, really. There's not that many people behind that a lot of people are going to get behind as a good candidate. Now, there are people who I like, but is that person going to be the right person who is going to be able to bring a good coalition of people together in the future? No, because they've gotten rid of lots of charismatic people. They've silenced them. They've pushed them to the side. They've brought in candidates who, yes, have challenged Starmer, the newer ones, but at the same time, they've tried to select this. There could have been some great candidates out there that could have been Labour MPs, but they were, trying to be very specific on who they brought on. It hasn't worked out for them, but they have tried to control the party to a point where the damage that they have done to it is going to be seen for absolutely years. Do you want to say anything else on that before we move on to the next one, just because I'm worried about time?
Yeah, just very quickly. Banseka can be friend of the show. We were on the Politics Joe podcast together, and she said a great point, which is that because Starmer's running sort of an authoritarian regime, they're incredibly paranoid, right? Anyone could be a turncoat to them. The reason why that's happening is because authoritarian regimes create paranoia, because of course it's all about controlling and maintaining power. So you're scared who's going to stab you in the back. That is why you've seen soft left figures being purged, not just the left. I don't think they started out to do that. I think they just wanted to make sure that a socialist running on a social democratic program that wanted to break from imperialism, that had an ethical foreign policy on Palestine, was never going to be anywhere near Labour leadership. I think that was the goal. I don't think they were concerned about the Andy Burnhams of the world, right? But as authoritarian regimes get, again, paranoid, they started purging the soft left too, because they were also a threat to Keir Starmer. Why would Andy Burnham, someone who I think was probably popular among the different factions, partly because he also represented many different factions, he was a Blairite at one point, let's say, he supported the Iraq War, supported PFI. I do think he's generally changed, though, and at the very least, he didn't stab Jeremy Corbyn in the back when he was Labour leader. All right, I don't think they set out to get rid of people like Andy Burnham, but because the party and the leadership has been so destructive that even people who hated Jeremy Corbyn and the left were like, okay, this top-downness is kind of crazy. We need to call it out, and that's why they started purging soft left people. That is why Keir Starmer absolutely did not want Andy Burnham being the candidate in Gorton and Denton. An insane thing to do. Why would you not have Andy Burnham as your candidate in Gorton and Denton? I believe Labour would have won that. I truly believe they would have won that election had Andy Burnham become an MP, because Keir Starmer was paranoid and Morgan McSweeney was paranoid.
And also, as well, they would have denied, if they would have made better moves, right? Think about Reform's successes in certain areas with MPs, right? The by-elections that they won for Sarah Pochin, that was lost by literally, if I remember correctly, it was like less than 10 votes, if I remember correctly. It was around
Which one, sorry?
It was around Sarah Pochen when she won her constituency.
Yeah.
It was less than 10
6
votes.
votes.
6 votes. There we go. 6 votes. And like, those 6 votes were lost by something that Keir Starmer and both Morgan McSweeney impacted at one point, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. They are allowing their damage isn't just the Labour Party or certain parts of policy and country, because in many ways there's some good policies that they have passed and they should be praised. However, the damage that they're doing as well at the same time is allowing reform to thrive. Even though they're down, they've still allowed them to gain a foothold. And again, the irony, this is the irony, I'll finish on this. The irony is that Morgan McSweeney's whole thing is that he's the guy who can take on the hard right and the far right. That's what he's famous for. He helped win this one election 20 years ago in a very niche part of the bloody country that nobody cares about, and he's now seen as this guy who can take on the hard right and the far right, when in actual fact, everything that he has done has allowed reform to gain a foothold. Everything. It's down to him, I would say. But anyway, we spent way too long on that story, even though it was very good.
It was a big... It's one of the biggest political stories, though. So I that's why the show is a bit longer, because of this story. Like, it's a massive, massive story.
But we will we'll have lots to talk about in the comments with this as well. But before we go on to the next story, we would like 2026 to be the year where we can have a studio and for our contributors to be paid for the work that we do. So your support over the years has obviously been amazing. It continues to be so. I'm just glad that people are here in the comments, the same people over and over again. But we are ready to try and take this to the next level. We rely on small donations. So if you want to be a part of a media organization that seeks to destroy the oligarchs, then please head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. There you can support us monthly on Patreon, or there is a link for a one-time contribution. And you can also become a YouTube member for 99 pence. Now, on to the final story. Balls to the walls. During an interview with Zack Polanski, he challenged his interviewer, Ed Balls, by pointing out the obvious fact that he was being grilled by a former Labour cabinet minister whose wife is currently one of the most senior Labour politicians in government, Home Secretary Yvette Cooper. Now,
do you know what
sorry, let's play the video. Oh, sorry, no, play the video.
Do you know what I'm enjoying? That the fact that a Labour politician who's married to a senior Labour minister is allowed to ask questions of a leader of the Green Party. This is not our manifesto, and what you're doing.
Are you accusing me? Are you accusing me of being?
Are
you accusing me of being a Labour politician?
I'm accusing it. Well, it's not even an accusation. You know, we are planning to replace the Labour Party and take the fight to reform. But what you're asking me right now,
so
and no
you
question
said I was
about
a Labour politician. Did you mean that? Did you mean that or not?
Well, you might have been a Labour minister fairly recently,
a Labour cabinet minister
10, 20 years. So
yeah. Look, unfortunately, Mr. Polanski, I lost my seat in 2015, and I've not been a Labour politician for 10 years. Luckily, you're a Green politician. You are the party leader. Hang on a sec, Mr. Polanski. You accused me of being a Labour cabinet minister 16 years ago.
Sorry, I can literally hear people laughing in the background. The producers and Curtis are laughing in the background right now. So Ed Balls is angry, and you don't want to be around Ed Balls when he's angry. But seriously, Balls' response. Jesus Christ. I've met him, by the way, when I was 16 in a college in Leeds. Balls' response was immediate, and he was very defensive. He pushed back by insisting that he had not been a Labour politician for over a decade, as though the passing of time somehow dissolved political history, institutional relationships, or ideological proximity. But that response, misses the point so completely. It almost proves Polanski's argument, because nobody was saying Ed Balls is still sitting on the Labour's front bench. Nobody was suggesting he was, secretly winning votes from, the Good Morning Britain sofa. The point is much more, simple. And it's harder for, Westminster to confront this idea that political power does not end when you lose your seat. Influence does not evaporate when you leave Parliament. Networks don't disappear because your parliamentary pass expires. And proximity to power certainly does not vanish when you are married to one of the most senior ministers in government. Now, one part of all of this that frustrates me is again the conflicts of interest when it comes to lots of people. I don't think that Ed Balls as a former minister should have a TV show slot in any way whatsoever, whether it's on Good Morning Britain, GB News, or any other place. If you actually consume as many podcasts or other shows as I do related to politics, right? If anyone's ever I do listen to The Rest Is Politics because I need to see what other people are saying, and you will still get both Alistair Campbell and also Rory Stewart defending defending everything that they did. You know, for Alistair Campbell, it's 20 years ago. For Rory Stewart, it's a slightly bit more recently. Right, we're talking what 8 to 10 years ago. He still defends that to this day because they're still party political. They cannot be objective. They still defend that, and it's the same for lots of other people. The one that really grinds my gears in terms of like conflict of interest, because I don't do guilt by association. So like Camilla Tominey, her dad is like the guy I believe who is in charge of Lawyers for Israel, whatever it's called. UK Lawyers for Israel. And that would be fine if she didn't seem to be completely, biased. She railed after Corbyn during the period that we were just talking about. We're talking about back-to-back articles, coverage all day, every day. Camilla Tominey going after Corbyn at any point. And she is the same person who, about 2 months ago, put out an article saying that we should just dismiss all these claims against Nigel Farage and his anti-Semitism. So I think it's fine to have people who are close to you and your family who have certain jobs which could cause a conflict of interest, as long as you can show that you can be objective. But most of these people can't. I don't trust Ed Balls to be objective when it comes to grilling Labour. The same way when you listen to the rest of politics, you will get Alistair Campbell defending Keir Starmer and Labour as a whole, and this cycle just continues. And I don't think it's going to change. These types of conflict of interest should not be allowed in our mainstream discourse in the UK. And even if somebody else has to suffer for that, right? In terms of you have the opportunity to have an amazing job, but your, wife or husband, whoever else might, be in conflict of that. I'm sorry, but there's someone else who can have that job. Okay, so I already know what you're going to say, but is Ed Balls a bit delusional in thinking that his Labour past is politically irrelevant when he's interviewing the leader of a party in the UK?
Oh, God. Are you accusing me of being a Labour politician? Honestly, sorry, I was fucking dead. It was me laughing in the background. You couldn't hear me, but in Lewis's ear, it was just me dying. Incredible interview. First of all, I am so happy that someone has finally called out Ed Balls. God, there's so many things I want to say about this. Number one, though, it's very important to point out that there was manufacturing of consent happening. After that clip went out, there was just, if you Googled it, article after article after article after article, car crash interview from Zack Polanski, car crash interview from Zack Polanski. And it's like, was not a car crash interview from Zack Polanski. That was Ed Balls making a massive tit of himself. Or, balls of himself. If that makes any sense. Of course it's a conflict of interest. Now, what Ed Balls says is, well, I wasn't a Labour politician for 15 years or 10 years or whatever. That's not the point, though, because he doesn't understand power or he's lying about power. Just because you're not an elected Labour politician doesn't mean you have power. I mean, number one, you are a host on a morning programme on ITV. That's power, right? Your wife, Yvette Cooper, is Home Secretary, one of the most powerful positions in the country. We're not just talking about a Labour politician, we're talking about a government politician, a government official, right? That is your wife. Ed Balls reflects a very narrow political view, and he's very biased when he's on G&B, which is the Labour right. When you get someone from the Labour left, that doesn't really exist anymore, or someone from the left, whether it's Owen Jones or whether it's Zack Polanski, he's extremely bitter. Extremely bitter. Very different when he's got a centrist or Labour right politician on. So Ed Balls is incredibly biased because he represents the right-wing faction of the Labour Party, which, to be honest, factions do not exist in the Labour Party anymore. It's all just right-wing. That's important to note. I'm also sick and tired of fucking liberals when they're like, they say nothing about this, but like, oh, but Nigel Farage and Lee Anderson has got his own show on GB News. Yes, that's a massive problem. The fact that Ofcom have done nothing about this is nothing short of disgraceful. Nigel Farage is the leader of a political party. Lee Anderson is an MP. They have their own show. The fact that that isn't a conflict of interest is wild to me. The fact that we've allowed that is fucking wild to me. It should be shut down, right? Nigel Farage's show should be shut down. Lee Anderson's show should be shut down immediately because you cannot have that, right? The point is we need to hold MPs to account. The role of the media literally exists to hold people in positions of power to account, especially MPs. We cannot have MPs using the corporate media to spout their own political biases, right? That's bad. But liberals don't say shit about Ed Balls. They don't say nothing. which is crazy too. And I'm so glad that Zack Polanski just called him out straight up. I've noticed in the last couple of days that Zack Polanski has been very more aggressive. I won't say very aggressive. A bit more aggressive than recently. I think he said on another interview, these questions, because they kept asking... Oh, actually, you know what? It was the same interview with their balls. They kept asking about the hypno booth thing. And I'm like, why are you asking that now? Fair enough to ask him about that question when he first became leader and it came out. And it was on GMB, by the way, with their balls. They asked him about the hypno booth question. He said that was like 10 years ago. I'm sorry about that. We all do stupid shit. Let's move on. But have you noticed how the hypno booth thing has come around again? It's because the Green Party is surging and the corporate media is panicking. And that is why they're bringing it up again. And Zack Polanski had a perfect response. He said, I noticed that you haven't asked me about taxing billionaires or bills or rent. It's 10 days before local elections, right? You are doing the country a massive fucking disservice asking Zack Polanski about a hypno boob story when in 10 days' time or on 9 days' time, people are going to go to the polls and vote nationally on the local level, but nationally on who they want to represent in the councils. What are you going to do about potholes? What are you going to do about public services? And the question you ask is about a fucking hypno boob story. And Zack Polanski's response was that, and he said, this is why people hate the media. And this is why people hate the media. This is why people are watching Turn Left media. This is why people are watching Navarra media. This is why people are watching Naked Politics. They're reading The Canary, right? Because people are sick and tired of legacy media, the corporate media, and I think that we should be more aggressive. I want Zack Polanski to go on every single show and say, this is why you're hated. Because you don't ask the questions that people really care about.
This is why we need much stricter rules when it comes to this arena. You've got, GB News, the main shareholder, Sir Paul Marshall, he had a secret Twitter account unveiled. We all knew what his opinions were anyway, about, him wanting to, deport, loads of Muslims and whatever else he said, right? That stuff can't be really controlled, in terms of he's got this political opinion. But what can be controlled is the fact that GB News recently reported by the Middle East Eye, because we know the Farage has been courting people in the Middle East for donors. More on that to come soon, guys. That GB News helped host the party in the UAE, which, by the way, GB News is half owned by a UAE-based company.
Legatum Institute, isn't it?
What's that?
Legatum Institute.
Yeah, basically, yeah. It's Sir Paul Marshall is a 1% more shareholder, 43% over this UAE-based investment company. And they hosted a party which was there to help boost Nigel Farage, and GB News was there too, reporting from the event, being part of the event. No one else was allowed to be there besides GB News. When you've got Michael Gove being the editor of The Spectator, it can't be objective. We know what their opinions are anyway.
George Osborne wants the Observer. George Osborne wants the Observer.
Did he? I don't remember that.
So after he brought in austerity that murdered 330,000 people with austerity, he fucked off to the Observer.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, only a few years after.
Do you know what I found out recently? I wouldn't class this person as a journalist, so maybe it's a clue, but do you know who George Farmer is?
George Farmer?
Yeah. One of Reform's biggest donors, 200K.
So what's
Candace Owens' husband.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Oh wow!
I only found.
I didn't know that.
I've been looking at
very interesting.
Yeah, I've been looking at reform donors. More to come on that soon. And I was like, oh, who's this George Farmer guy? Maybe I'll have to figure who this donor is out. Nope. Google him.
Very long, did it?
Candace Owens' husband is one of the biggest reform donors. What? How did I know this?
That's crazy.
And again, it goes back to that Camilla Tominey thing as well. Again, I think journalists can be objective, but at the same time, when they're proven not to be, she cannot seriously talk about anti-Semitism. I don't think she can be possibly objective on it.
I mean, to be fair, the entire media cannot talk about anti-Semitism, can they? I mean, that's not a Camilla Tominey problem. That is a national issue in the political discourse that we cannot talk about anti-Semitism. I think that's.
But this is why independent media is so good, and this is not even a plug to us. I'm talking about completely different outlets. Like, again, even that story that I mentioned earlier, like Byline, right? Like, they've been doing some of, honestly, the most amazing investigative journalism over the last, well, for a while now, but over the last few months, it's been particularly good. And it's not even because, like, oh, they've got any sort of political bias. It's because when media is independent, it will go after stories specifically, which is about holding people accountable. Whereas, like, other forms of media aren't necessarily incentivized to do that. They're not set up, they're set up to obviously make profit, to meet people's agenda, to go after clickbait, to go after the boob story, for example, right? That's going to make good TV. People who run ITV and the people who run that show will want somebody like Ed Balls to be on that show to ask Zack Polanski that question, the same way that people liked Piers Morgan in a similar position years before, because he's that kind of guy who will just get people to watch. It's not
Yeah, but do you
about
know what,
the
though?
content is, it's just about wanting people to consume it.
Do you know what? But Piers Morgan is at least charismatic. I would give him that. I don't like Piers Morgan, but I think he's quite charismatic. I also think he's quite effective when he wants to be. You know, the Russell Brand interview, that very famous clip of the excruciating, very silent clip of Russell Brand looking through the Bible, right? That was like really effective for Piers Morgan.
Yeah,
Ed Balls ain't got the sauce, man. Ed Balls, he ain't got the sauce. He's a terrible interviewer. Like, political bias aside, because I think he's shit in terms of politics, right? And his political bias, right? If I were to be objective, though, at Ed Balls' skills, he ain't got none. I can at least say that Piers Morgan is incredibly effective. I think he'd be at times very good. Again, not his politics, but I think he's very good at, again, getting certain clips, for example. I think that's true. Ed Balls, though, he ain't got nothing.
But that's the difference between like good and bad journalism. And even though I'm not a big fan of this person, I think it's Sophie Ridge from Sky News. She had on one of the Labour ministers the other day. Can't even remember his name. And it was about Mandelson, and it was about him. He was the minister on the morning rounds, and it's a clip that's gone around now where she's basically saying he's like giving generic answers to thingy, and she was like, "You have come from number 10. Did you ask the question that I am trying to ask you?" And then he's like giving a generic response, and she's saying, "So you didn't obviously ask the question." So it's a case of like the questioning was actually really good from her. Like, it's a really good clip. I'm not doing it justice at all, as opposed to oftentimes, and Sophie Ridge has done this, and other Sky News people, Beth Rigby, not a big fan. They try and constantly go for the gotcha, but the reason the gotcha works sometimes and it's useful, right? The Piers Morgan moment with the Bible, that was a kind of a good gotcha moment by him saying nothing at all. Don't like Piers Morgan, but at the same time, because they kind of farm that, they go after it so much, and a lot of the time it actually fails, and therefore they have wasted an opportunity to actually hold a politician accountable in a good way, because Zack Polanski should be held accountable. There's been reporting, which again, it's agenda driven, the idea that the Spectator and the Telegraph are trying to investigate every single person that's ever existed with the Green Party and going after every single person through their Facebook feeds and all of that. That is agenda driven, but at the same time, he should still be held accountable.
Absolutely.
With these candidates, how are you vetting them? That is good questioning, and that is good journalism. But going after these gotchas in the way that they do, it's just shitty journalism most of the time.
People on the left are not saying you can't criticize left-wing leaders or you can't hold them to account, right? There were questions the mainstream media should put to Jeremy Corbyn, because at the end of the day, even though a lot of us liked him, like his politics, he was still going to potentially wield power over us, right? It's important they're grilled. Same with Zack Polanski, right? I think it was important to bring up the Hypno Boob story at that time, right? But obviously now they're doing it for agenda. That's important. But I think that, look, I also think it's worth mentioning that just because I lump mainstream media people into the same group, there is a hierarchy in that group. Like, Ed Balls is far inferior to someone like Sophie Ridge. Like, Sophie Ridge is restrained by the corporate media, granted, but she is definitely better than Ed Balls. I've seen her interviews. I think she's more effective. I also think she's way more sensible when it comes to quote-unquote gotchas. Like, if someone's not answering a question, call that out. Say, you're not answering the question. Doing a gotcha for the sake of it, for clicks and views or whatever, is not sensible. And that's something that what Ed Balls would do. I mean, I would someone I really respect, right? And, okay, fine, he is on the left. So maybe it's easy for me to say that. But I do generally think, in an objective way, he's a very good journalist. He's a very good interviewer. And that's Mehdi Hasan. Like, he's incredibly effective. And, he had Graham Plantner on, who's running in the US for a Senate seat in Maine. And despite the fact that Mehdi Hasan agrees with Graham Plantner's politics, he asked him, like, tough questions, which are good and important questions to ask. Someone like Mehdi has integrity. He's very consistent. I mean, imagine just thinking about Mehdi and Ed Balls, like just these two figures. Crazy that, you know, these two people exist in the media when one is far superior. Of course, Mehdi has now left corporate media and he's started Zateo, which, you know, Zateo is doing some really good stuff. But it's crazy that these two people exist in the same sphere when Ed Balls he got there through connections and he's terrible, and Mehdi is very good.
But the quality of journalism has gone down so much over the years. I respect the way Andrew Neil has interviewed people in the past more than I do with some more modern left journalists. Because at least even back in the day, Andrew Neil he's very biased in many ways. And there's been many moments where people will say he's not been the best journalist. But even still, you can go back to clips like Ben Shapiro and other leading conservative figures in the country where he's absolutely fucking grilled them. And this is probably part of the reason why his relationship with GB News just didn't work out, because they were wanting to do too much more tabloidy stuff. And even now, the current, groups of journalists that we've got out there, I just don't think are just generally doing that good of a job. There are some better ones. I actually really like Lewis Goodall, even though I don't agree with Emily Matlis on everything. If I want somebody grilled, I want them in front of Emily, because Emily is genuine. It's not just because of Prince Andrew. It's not the one Prince Andrew interview. She's done it so many times, whether it's Rupert Lowe or somebody really far on the left. She is very good.
I mean,
at doing it.
At the very least, she just straight up called Rupert Lowe a racist. And I was quite surprised, but I was surprised about that, because that's not an Emily Matlis thing to do. That's not a corporate media thing to do. They usually be like, oh, well, wow, this someone, one might find this problematic, but she was like, you're a racist, aren't you? So I was like almost blown away that she did it. I think you're probably giving too much credit to Emily Matlis, though, and Lewis Goodall. Like, I think Lewis Goodall, I don't think is quite as bad as Emily Matlis. I don't have much respect for these people. But, you know, that's by the by, isn't it?
Well, we are picking. Well, that's what I mean. We're picking amongst the bad bunch, aren't we? Anyway, I didn't even realise the time. Wow.
Wow. Sorry.
I know people start to sign up from 9 usually. So let's go to the comments. Let's go to the producer. Hello. Who have we got today?
Hello.
It's me.
It's
It is I. It's me, Sarah. I don't know. Should I? Yeah.
It's me, Sarah Delau.
It's me, Sarah Delau, here again. Great show, guys. What an excellent analysis. I'm worried that I'm a little bit too loud, so sorry, guys, if I am going to.
Yeah, let us know about the audio volumes, and we'll see if we can rectify it. But
hello, producer. I hope I'm not too loud. Okay, so let's go to super chats really quickly. I'm going to zoom through comments. But thank you, Michael, for the 10 love membership. Dreamy. Also, thank you again, Michael, for the 10 love membership. Dreamy. Thanks, Kate, for becoming a member. That's also very wonderful and dreamy. And then
are you gonna say "dreamy" after every single one?
Probably.
Dreamy.
A utopian dream. Layla then gave £5. Thank you so much. I said to everyone in the chat and all of 10 left.
Aww.
Thank you for existing.
That's a really sweet
Please keep
comment.
doing it, which actually was really wonderful.
That's really nice. Thank
so
you.
much.
Just that was genuinely really nice. Not just to us, but like everyone in the chat as well. Like I like that you. Not just saying thanks to us, but like thanks to people who are here, because I love it when we see the same faces come in every single show.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And also, guys, I didn't do my usual guess the producer, because I thought you guys knew it was me. Specs then gifted 5 10 left memberships, which is great. Thank you so much, Specs. And then Ollie, again, thank you so much, Ollie, for 5 10 left memberships. And then Specs gifted £5, saying, "Got my 10 left mug today. Can't wait for the t-shirt." And
I
stickers
saw
to
it.
show
I
up."
saw it in the Discord. It looks so cool. It's got the turn left mugs. It's white and then black on the inside, and then the handle's black, and it's got the logo on it. It looks so cool. So yeah, I saw it in the Discord. Loved it.
It is sick. And then Antifa Vegan Boy, great name.
Yeah.
Gifted 10 left membership. So thank you so much. Right, let's get into the comments really quickly.
Also, quickly, don't tell Stella that I'm drinking a beer. But guess what? We're all volunteers, right? So technically, is this work yet? But again, I'm not against people drinking at work. I just don't think an MP should be drinking. Anyway, carry on.
Correct answer. Becca said, this is a drinking story, we'll just go from the top. She literally says what she sees and gets lambasted. And I was talking about Hannah Spencer, and she literally it was just an observation, and everyone all of a sudden was like, "Oh, well, MPs should be able to drink," and and it was like, I was looking at the tweets, and it was so hilarious to see these ordinary people like bootlicking these MPs the way that they were, like, "Oh, but they should be allowed to drink." Okay, Then let teachers drink before parents' evening, and let nurses drink before taking someone's blood. Like, make it make sense. It's so stupid. It makes
I can guarantee right now, at least either the Spectator, but more probably the Telegraph, will have a full-time photographer following around Hannah Spencer, just waiting for a moment where they can say that she was drinking at work or something like that.
But she's already she's already posted on her an Instagram account of her in a pint. Interesting. So when I was in Parliament, I was speaking to, I think it was either a Labour MP or a Labour peer. I think it was a Labour MP, and she said to me, "Well, this is really stupid from Hannah Spencer because anytime she has like a pint in her hands, the media is going to call her out." And I said, I don't think it's that stupid though, because at the end of the day, one, don't make every decision based on the media because they're going to call it hypocrisy anyway, and two, once again, there's a difference having a pint outside of work than on the clock. I think there's a real big difference there.
It's not
but I agree that there is going to be like paparazzi or whatever, or political paparazzi everywhere trying to snap something up.
But to think about how they've like weaponized something that's currently being demonized by these people, right? Like, when can you ever think of a moment where there's ever been an MP who's a man who's ever been like papped, and a story's come out of it where it's to do with him like having a drink? That's nothing to do with, you know, like sexual assault type stuff. I mean, just how outside having fun, because that's happened now to Diane Abbott, right? We've got black working class woman from
Mojito, wasn't it? Yeah.
And also Angela Rayner. Is it the beach on Brighton or was it Bristol or whatever? And you know, it's her at the beach in the dinghy. With the drink, and it's always the women that they go after when it comes to these types of stories. And the fact that now one of these women who is like a working class woman, northern accent, new MP, is talking about this, they're all obviously going to attack her because
but I
it's
also
in
think
line
it's
with that attack against Angela Rayner and Diane Abbott over the years.
I think it's the sexism angle of classiness, right? Because of course, the media is still dominated by public school poshos. So I think it's like, well, if a man has a drink, that's just is what it is, right? If a woman has a drink though, or drinks, it's so unclassy. And actually, again, like I once upon a time I liked Angela Rayner. I don't like her now, but the attacks, especially from GB News, have been utterly classist and sexist against her. They've attacked what she wears. They attack that she loves to go out and get pissed up, and it's like, so fucking what? Again, you do it in Parliament, not good. But after work, if she wants to go out and get fucked up, I love that shit. That's one of the things I like about Angela Rayner, because she's normal. Again, I think her political instincts are kind of shit now, and I wish she had a stronger spine to stand up to Starmer. But yeah, a lot of the attacks against Angela Rayner are absolutely classist and sexist.
By the way, I forgot to bring it up during the story, but the vote happened right before the show started, and they're not doing an investigation against Starmer. He won by just over 100 votes, but there were 60 MPs who didn't vote or didn't turn up.
How many voted against? Sorry, how many voted to refer him?
230 voted for it.
Sorry, you're confused. So 220 voted to not refer Keir Starmer to the committee.
Oh, sorry, apologies. I'll start from the top. He got over 100 majority. It was 300 and something to not investigate and refer him to the select committee. And then it was 210 to 20-ish who voted to refer him to the select committee. And around 50 to 60 Labour MPs either didn't turn up or just didn't vote.
You still get... I don't think you get numbers right there. Because you said over 200 voted in favour to the select committee.
Yeah.
Out of 300.
No. There was over 300 voted to not refer him.
Okay, sorry. I thought you said total. Right, yeah, sorry. I'm having a moment.
Sorry, I should have had the numbers to say it properly, but anyway, there we go.
And basically, he's not getting referred to the committee, but he whipped his own fucking Labour MPs to not do it.
Yes.
Yeah. And he said, and by the way, you could tell like the line in the group chat was like, oh, it's a political stunt from our enemies, because all of the MPs lined up said it's a political stunt. To be honest, right, your political enemies didn't force you to appoint Peter Mandelson. That's just bare corruption, though. I mean, to be fair, corruption implies that something went wrong. Like, this is according to the plan, isn't it? But this is wild to me. This is absolutely insane. Like, the fact that he whipped his MP to say, don't hold me accountable. Crazy. Man needs to fucking go. He needs to resign.
Yeah. And then Oliver said, just echoing what you were saying, guys, what angers me is the argument that only MPs are there for long hours. What about all the other staff, the cleaners, the bar staff themselves? A bartender would be fired for drinking on the job. And then Antifa Vegan Boy was just bigging up Lewis. We need another long Lewis info dump special. Autumn was asking, did you have any shots, Curtis?
No, I stuck to pints. What do I have? Guinness and then some like IPA. So that was it really. It's wild to me. So
only verbal shots, eh? Hey.
The MPs get served before everybody else, by the way, which is really offensive. Because, and do you know why? Which I think favours my argument. The reason why MPs get first dibs over everybody else is because they need to get their drink before they go and vote. Because, like, they could be called to vote, so they need to get in quicker. Which tells me, well, if you need to quickly get in to buy a drink to go and vote, that just shouldn't be happening. So, like, I went out to the bar to get myself a drink, and like, oh no, you need an MP to come over with their pass to tap it. To be fair, I think it's not either MPs or those who have a lobby pass, because I think Ava sort of took me to the bar a few times. But yeah, it's just fucking insane.
There's loads of the weird laws around Parliament as well. There's one where, like, at their discretion, an MP can just tell anybody to be able to get out. So if you,
really?
Like, in theory, they shouldn't do it, but they can. If somebody was bothering them, like a journalist, they can just literally use their power to say, "I want this person removed," and they have that power because they're an MP. There's loads of weird niche laws and stupid stuff around Parliament.
I mean, luckily I was well behaved then. I didn't. In a way, I was kind of glad, but I didn't
accidentally leave a bag which might look like a bomb on parliamentary premises.
You cannot say
I never
that.
did that before.
What?
When we went to interview Carla Denya in Portugal's house?
Portcullis house, yeah.
Yeah. We were outside before with Carla and her team because they couldn't leave us alone because we weren't officially, we were just guests.
We had to be
not allowed
escorted
walk
to the
around.
toilet, didn't we?
We were outside for a bit. I put my bag down outside in an open area.
I don't remember that.
Remember, I ran back for my bag and I was thinking, oh my God, they're going to think it's like a bomb or something. Because I was in like a confined area within Parliamentary grounds. And I ran back like across the estate to like go and get my backpack because I left it just out in an open area just by itself.
Also, I didn't pay for any drinks, right? Because like the MPs paid for it, and I'm kind of thinking, well,
You're a pauper.
Well, they're on over 90 grand a year, so I'm not going to fucking say no. Right?
We're in the work.
In fact, my taxpayers pay for your fucking way. So yeah.
Trust me, so give me everything free.
Literally, but it was actually just easy though, because you had to get like an MP to go to the bar to get you a drink. It was
bloody afford it.
Yeah. It was like well, what do you want to drink? I was like, I'll have this. I was like, okay, I'll be back in a minute. I was just kind of it.
Yeah, I would be like, can I get some food too?
Do you know what I saw? I saw Dan Hodges there, and I saw James Cleverly, and I saw him, and I just in my head I laughed.
Sorry, I really want to play the Ed Balls video again because when I played it, I'm not joking. This is no word of lie. I was cackling. I had tears streaming down my face at Ed Balls being like, "You see, a Labour politician."
That's why I had to explain to the audience like why I look so distracted because all I could hear was you two laughing in the background.
I couldn't help it. I couldn't help it.
But yeah, I said in our Discord as well. I was like, this is strange for me because I was looking around the room. I was like, I wonder who on Twitter I called the C word. Because I probably would have been some. I mean, I've fucking said some mean stuff to Dan Hodges.
I think he deserves it. By the way,
you do. I do say some mean stuff about Dan Hodges, but I think he deserves it. But it was lucky. Like even though I never like interacted with people who like have supported the genocide. There were people that Ruby obviously did, but like I didn't have any interaction with these people. In a way, I'm kind of glad because I wouldn't have not been able to be like, why are you supporting this genocide in Palestine? I know I'm not here on this business, but like, how can you not say that? Probably would have been thrown out. So I think it was good that didn't happen.
But like it almost like ties into one of the comment about like Lewis info dump, and I'm not going to info dump, but I will be doing ones in the future. But I've been engaging way more over the last few months with lots of mainstream journalists because there's information that I've been helping investigate that I can't do what I'd need to do with it, because I don't have the resources, I don't have the even level of expertise to understand fully what I'm looking at. So I've been trying to get it to the mainstream journalists. Some of it has ended up out there, and I'm trying to do a bit more. But what was interesting is that there's one story that I can't say anything about because I don't want to get sued, that is currently with journalists, and this story made its way to an MP's desk. I will say it is a Labour MP, and it's a big story. And this MP said that they were too busy to look at it because they were writing a book. And also in the same instance, there's other journalists who've been involved in this, some parts of these stories, and how like unbothered they are by certain things, or like their taste for it. It's kind of like they wanted to not, if it does, something doesn't fully fit into their narrative, they'll almost just kind of like dismiss it in a way. It's been really interesting the last few months to see how some people in like the political establishment operate. Like, it doesn't surprise me, actually. It's just to actually see it has been really frustrating. Hopefully that story will come out soon. We will see.
Yeah, I mean, you've been doing some really good work though, because you've been doing it like selflessly. Like, I understand that that we don't have the capacity to run that as turn left exclusive, right? But yet, you basically said, not only do we need to stop reform, but we just need to stop right-wing forces, and we need to stop the oligarchy. And if I can pass it off to mainstream outlets, those that will cover it is better than nothing. So it's like, I think another type of person would be like, no, let's just do it under the turn left banner. But we're still quite small, we're growing, and what's more important, us getting exclusive or potentially like getting information to people that's really, really dangerous. I mean, the links to, I know we can't go into detail, but the links to certain nations and organizations with reform in terms of political connections and in terms of funds is really insanely worrying. Like, of course, every political party has lobbies from other countries and corporations. Of course, every political party, or most political party, have a Zionist faction and an Israel lobby. We understand that. But it's like that, like reform has that, plus more, and the more is really, really scary.
It's very scary. Hopefully, I'll be putting something out before the local elections. We'll see. But yeah, so much foreign influence and dark money floating around everywhere. But I've never seen it the way it is in reform. I can say that much. It's very scary. And if you want to kind of just understand exactly the area that I'm talking about, you can go and look at the Times and FT recently, who published about reform's donor linked to Iran. And that's all I'll say for now. I'll leave that as a teaser. I'll leave that as a teaser.
That is the public domain, so you can say that, yeah.
I think I'll just go to one more comment, and it's this one from Michael on Hannah. I don't know, seeing the vote share Hannah got, maybe Burnham wouldn't have won. If you guys want to say anything on that.
Yeah, so I did highlight that comment because I still think Andy would have won. My logic with this is that, number one, this was a very, very highly engaged by-election. Like, people were really switched on. And an insane statistic, right, is this by-election had a higher turnout than the 2024 general election. Imagine, a by-election, more people voted in the by-election than Gorton and Denton did in the 2024 general election. That's insane. Not only does that show how bad voter turnout is in general elections, but it showed the high amount of enthusiasm to vote in the Gorton and Denton by-election. The Green Party was successful, mostly, I think, very close to election day because they got bodies on the street. Callum Taylor, who's better suited to explain this to you because he was literally there, said there were so many Green Party activists that were there. And there was also a lot of undecideds. Those who could not work out whether it was going to be Labour or the Greens decided very last minute. And based on party data, undecideds would basically sort of moving towards the Greens, right? So given that there was such a big chunk of those who hadn't decided until maybe a couple of days or even the day of election, if most of those votes went to Labour and under Andy Burnham, he could have won. Of course, I could be wrong. Like, maybe Andy Burnham ran and the Greens won by 500 votes. That's also plausible. But I also think that would be an interesting story because it just shows that Andy Burnham was important to the Labour Party. Because even if, again, hypothetically, Andy Burnham ran, they lost by 500 votes, people could be like, well, to be honest, the Labour Party brand is toxic and they lost this, but it was a tight race. It could have been worse. Could have been much worse. And as we know, the Greens won by, was it 4,000 or 6,000 votes? One of the two, but like it was a landslide.
Mm-hmm. In terms of like how the vote split, yeah, in many cases, Reform, for example, have won because everybody else lost. That is Reform's success. You can probably argue one of the only seats around that probably could be Farage's. I still don't think that Labour would have won it in that period if they ran a candidate that wasn't part of some sort of political drama at the high levels. Farage probably still would have won, but pretty much all the other seats, Reform won because everybody else was doing so badly in many ways, and that's how the vote split. The same with Labour's success is based off of the Conservatives' failure, then Reform splitting their vote. Pretty much most of the political establishment right now, I'd say a big majority of them, actually have seats thanks to either other people doing very badly or other people splitting the vote. But actually, out of all those seats, especially like it's probably Hannah Spencer. Like in theory, because that vote was split on the quote unquote left of UK politics, that seat should have been handed to the Reform Party, but it wasn't because of how successful that campaign was ran. It wasn't a small margin; it was a landslide, which is why it's fair to say she actually won it, unlike other people only winning their seats because everybody else was just so bad.
Absolutely. I think probably... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, it's not to do with the comment. I just want to say one more thing about Parliament last night.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was quite shocked how open Labour Party MPs were showing their disdain towards Keir Starmer. So, the country doesn't like Keir Starmer. I forget that. But, like, speaking to MPs, how just open they were about how bad Keir Starmer is. How some of them just like, yeah, Keir Starmer's just a massive liar. I'm not allowed to name names to be fair, but yeah, I was almost shocked. Like, I can't believe. And you say it to me, like, I was with Ava, and a lot of the people knew who Ava was. I was a newbie there, right? And again, maybe this is the argument in favour of what Stella was saying, that MPs should be allowed to drink because I'm just a random guy to them, and they were like, yeah, fucking Keir Starmer's a shameful liar. I had a particular MP who was like, I voted for Becca Long Bailey, and I don't think Barry Garner would mind me saying this, but he said, look, I voted for Becca Long Bailey, and because I said, look, I'm like I'm probably the only person here who like supported Jeremy Corbyn, and he was like, really? Like, he was quite shocked that I said that, and he's like, look, Jeremy Corbyn had many flaws, but he was a man of immense integrity and honesty, and like he was very much praising him. So yeah, it's crazy how much they're all just like openly like, yeah, Keir Starmer is very, very bad. I know that Callum Taylor would jump at the chance of getting a lobby pass. Maybe that would happen. I personally would be happy to never be there again. I like our outside journalists.
They're very selective on their lobby pass anyway. Declassified.
No NDA.
No. About how they couldn't get theirs.
There's no NDA shit, right? But yeah, it was just, it just felt wrong. And do you know what? I'm not very good at the schmoozing. I saw Sam Tarry there, and I did say to him, I was like, you got so fucking shafted by Labour, by the way. And I don't know, I'm not very good at striking up conversations with Labour figures or MPs or whatever, because it was like, the conversation didn't last very long. He wasn't rude or anything, but it's just like, I didn't know how to keep it going. Because I'm not a lobby journalist, right? We're not insiders. I have no, like incentive for turn left to be like, let's make sure we can get in with the political establishment to report on it. I like the fact that we're on the outside. And I'm personally more than happy if I never stand inside the halls of Westminster ever again.
Oh, that is, yeah. I think it's a simulation, isn't it? It feels like I've never been.
Just remember, Starmer would rather be in Davos than Westminster.
Yeah, actually, turn up to Davos. That's where we're more comfortable.
Yeah. Do what Farage did and stand at the edge, like, this is what's happening, blah, 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 and post on Twitter. But I'm going to leave the comments there because it's getting quite late.
Yeah.
And I'll tell people about the marathon tomorrow because I'm hosting tomorrow.
Ooh.
That's what I wanted to say.
What day is it tomorrow? What day is
It's
it today?
Wednesday.
We don't obviously we don't do live shows on Tuesdays. So you're probably confused, but like, yeah, for those who are like, why are we doing a live show on Tuesday? I think we made the decision that, like, because we were covering the drinking story, and obviously I was in Parliament, and it's kind of crazy that happened. I think it was probably good that I was talking about it. But yeah, so if people are confused why we're doing a Tuesday, but I would love for one day to do Monday to Friday. I think we might agree on that one, right?
Yeah.
Maybe soon, hopefully. Maybe soon.
Maybe soon.
But yeah, I just went blank. What was I going to say? Anyway, Sarah, thank you.
Bye, guys.
That was a quick exit.
I just got confused on the days because I have been so balls deep into.
Sorry.
so Ed balls deep into.
So balls
the
deep.
stuff I've been looking at. That
Incredible.
I've just lost all sense of like day, night, weekend, whatever it might be, because it's just. I don't know. It's Tuesday, right? Yeah, okay. But anyway, glad you had a good time in Parliament, Curtis. You are an insider now, no matter what you say.
No,
bribed by
no. Well, we sold out. No, definitely not an insider. It felt yucky. Like, I feel a little bit yucky. Like, I'm glad it happened. Absolutely. Because it's an interesting thing, and also it's informative in a way. But yeah, I do feel a bit yucky. I do feel a bit like this is not the place for me. I don't belong here. But yeah.
Yeah, I get it. I fucking hate Parliament. Every time I've gone there, I've just been like, ugh. My first and only ever PMQs was the one where Diane Abbott was, where that massive Tory donor, who was it, Frank something? He's from Leeds, donated like 15 million.
Frank Hester, the one who was racist about Diane Abbott.
Yeah, let's just say, yeah, we think it's that one so we don't get sued.
True.
But that I was in Parliament that day at PMQs just watching it and watching Diane Abbott just stand up, sit back down.
Oh, how she was ignored about her literal own racial abuse. Crazy.
Yeah, her own, like, you know, people talking about how she should be shot. I just hate every aspect of it. Parliament, the journalist side of things. There are some good ones, but anyway. Thank you very much, Curtis. This has been a very, very long show, but obviously thanks for joining us. It probably took longer. Morgan McSweeney story, ages, obviously everything that Curtis has been doing the last couple of days added to the length of it, but I'm glad to see that still so many people are here to the end, so thank you very much. As Sarah said, she will be back tomorrow for tomorrow's show where she'll be talking about her marathon and anything else that's been happening in the world of news and politics. So we will see you again tomorrow. Thanks for joining us, and good night.